So do you have your Bibles here? Let's bring them out. I am reminded, John, he's right now preaching there at New Life over at Temple City. You remember this, Anna? As a child, Jesus, Yam of God. Worthy is your name. I loved it. Now I can't think of anything else. He was, I think, maybe 5 or 6, and amazing. Isn't it amazing how children grow? And I know you kids out there start saying, or teenagers or whatever, it's like, whatever, right? Sometimes we feel like that. But you know what? It's real. It'll come to you too. Where your child, where they grow and become an adult. Moms, you all see that, right? Just myself and my size, looking at my mom, you say, wow, I was that small. All right? We all deal with that in our lives. We see that we grow. I'd like you to turn in your Bibles to Luke. It's going to be Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10. And this is in the middle. It's at the end of chapter 10. So we're going to get to about verse 38. Luke chapter 10, verse 38. But this comes as a time when there were a lot of parables and Jesus was teaching. And of course, he was at a dinner party. And as usual, people will say, love your neighbor as yourself. So someone says, who's my neighbor? And of course, the Good Samaritan parable comes along. And you may remember that parable, that the outsider, the one that everyone saw would finish up the job of what the thieves had done and robbers had beaten up this guy that was on the path. And the insiders, like the preachers and the politicians, they walked past on the other side of the road, not wanting to get dirty as the man is dying. And then the Samaritan, the one that they thought culturally would be the one that would finish the job of killing the guy. Oh, the Samaritan took care of the guy that was hurt. He took him to an inn there in Jericho, and at least in the story, and paid the money it took to even get him healthy. We don't judge correctly from the outside, do we? You've heard the term, don't judge a book by its what? Cover. Sometimes the more cool books on the outside are kind of useless. And yet, sometimes the one that looks really boring is incredible. Never judge the book by the cover. And as we read this, I'd like to ask you all to never judge the book by the cover. For this thing filters right on into verse 38. Jesus and his disciples were on their way and came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. Martha. You already know the 2 M ladies from the Bible. Martha and Maria. That's right, Mary. Martha opens the home to Jesus. She had a sister named Maria, or Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. Verse 40. But Martha was what? Okay. Sherry, we don't know anything about distraction, do we? You know, it's one of those Sabbaths where everything has to get under control, and sometimes, you know, this isn't happening and that's messing up and the computer's messing up. And, well, in the ancient world, it's no different. You're trying to make falafels, right? You're going to make some good food for Jesus and the apostle, and nothing is working right. Oh, that's how it always is. Something didn't cook right. Something didn't do. Somebody needs something to drink. You know, at potluck, Anna's in charge of one team. Donna's in charge of another one. And boy, on those potluck weeks, it's busy. People say, oh, go sit down and eat. Anna always loves to say to me, John, we'd love to eat, but I kind of am busy. There's a lot of things to do. Because the minute you sit down and eat, you know what happens? Someone says, oh, where is this? You have to get back up and go, right? Welcome to serving. That's called service. I understand the concept of public servant has been lost. Sometimes we serve now, but it's not really serving, because sometimes the ones that we're supposed to serve sometimes they feel like they have to serve the public servant. Does that make sense? Sometimes us pastors get like that. Like, you know, we're here to serve. Sometimes it goes the other way around. And it's hard, because when you're in a service way, well, Martha was serving, and she was serving hard. And she kept looking out as she moved from the kitchen to the dining room at her lazy sister. Now, is that true? I don't know. Do you know anything about Mary? Heard any stories about Mary? We kind of probably have. In fact, many people, now there's arguments about which Mary, because some people say, well, Martha and Mary, but that's not Mary of Magdala. Then others say, oh, yes, this is Mary of Magdala. I am in the camp saying, yes, this is Mary of Magdala, but also the Mary of the sister of Lazarus, or Elazaro, that was in Bethany. The Mary and Martha, remember when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. Same one, I believe, same one. This Mary also was the woman caught in adultery in John chapter 8, which, by the way, some scholars believe should be in Luke, because that's a fragment that isn't the original John, but it was in that later on. Interesting if it was from Luke. That would be very interesting. This is the book of Luke where we deal with Mary. Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus listening. And Martha looks over and sees her, well, let's face it, she's stressed. Did you see the sermon title today? Rest. Rest. Stressed. My friends, stress is a part of life, especially now. And the very things that are supposed to take away our stresses. I'm reading a book called The Anxious Generation, talking about how the rewiring of kids from about 2010, there was a big change, and the stress levels of young people went up with this thing that's supposed to take away stress. Oh, now I can order DoorDash. I don't even need to go and get it. But now there's so many extra things to worry about. It used to be my phone was at the house and in the office. So if someone wanted to bother me in the middle of what I'm doing, they had to find a way to drive to me and tell me, John, where are you? You need to go over here. But now, at the whim of everyone, there's text messages coming all the time. And by the way, Pastor John's good at those too, right? Everybody's communicating. And there are those days when they all come at once. Like yesterday, I looked down at my phone and there were 22 text messages. As Anna and I finally were getting something to eat at 7:30 in the evening. Lunch, we both missed lunch. It was a long day. And I looked, 22 text messages. And I go, they're all valid and useful. But wow. Now, some days have been more. Some days have been more. And you know that. We all want rest. So what we immediately do is we either say, I disconnect, I don't care anymore. I'm done. I'm no longer going to burn the candle on both ends. I'm done. I'm checking out. Martha has this. Well, Martha's a good Seventh-day Adventist. She's a good Jew. She's a good believer, let's say. And she says, I'm sick and tired of it. I'm ready to check out of this, but I'm going to go tell Jesus that he needs to get involved in this. If Maria is going to be lazy, at least maybe if the pastor tells her to not be lazy, maybe she won't be lazy anymore. Considering Mary, was she lazy? You know, here's the interesting thing. Big steps for one person sometimes are small steps for another. And small steps for one person are huge leaps for others. This is why I love Jesus so much. You know, I'm so glad he's the judge, not me. Because I'm telling you, I know exactly who should go to heaven and who should go to hell. No, yes. Yes, no. That's how we are as human beings, right? But Jesus looks beyond our actions, and he weighs the heart. So Martha comes to him and asks, now I love this. In the book of Luke, there are a few people that say this, Lord, don't you care? And I have a sermon that I got to do soon. Don't you care? Because Peter says that as well in the boat. Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me here to do all the work myself? You know what? I've heard that among our deacons and deaconesses every once in a while. Or I've heard that in our lives. Sometimes Anna and I are sometimes actually just Anna too, doing stuff. And you get frustrated and upset, don't you? When you feel like you're the only one doing anything. And you know when we get like that, our heads only see here. Like, it's called tunnel vision. Have you had tunnel vision? She says, don't you care that my sister is lazy sitting there at your feet listening when she should be with her backside in here helping out? Stressed that the meal will not be appropriately served, that the stuff will not happen, that the dinner party isn't going to happen correctly. And sometimes, by the way, the stress we have, sometimes there are stresses we can have, which some of them are real and some of them are perceived. You know those ones, right? The perceived ones oftentimes are what people are going to think of me. What are they going to think of me? I go through that. You know, I look at the tithe, and you know, okay, how is it that my president's going to look at me if the tithe is here or there? I'm going to try. Can I do? I can't do anything about it actually, other than I can say, please give, right? But I'm like, how are people going to perceive me? And then I start saying, oh, wait, it doesn't actually, I'm sorry, but doesn't really matter. What matters is whether people's lives are changing for good. And I go, ever heard of the film Waiting to Exhale? Exhale, back in the 90s? Whitney Houston, Waiting to Exhale. Unconditional love. It's out there. But this world does not have that. These devices accentuate the non-unconditional love that this world has. It's always about results, 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 and the results they want. Because that's how you FOMO people. Ever heard of FOMO? Fear of missing out. Disney does that all the time. They have a whole section of FOMO, making sure people know, oh, if you don't do this, don't do that, you're going to, that's how they make their money. And the industries do that, and churches do that sometimes. Fear of missing, oh, if you don't give this, you don't do that, oh, well, then you're going to miss out. Somebody's not going to know it. And then some people just check out. I don't care. Boy, you're hard to manipulate when you say I don't care. So they just kind of like off to the side and go to the next, person, or they hope they can get a spouse or some relative to care. It's whenever there's a sale, right? You get 1,000 text messages telling you that everything's going to be the same price it was yesterday, but they tell you it's so much cheaper, right? Stress can also be not true stress, but something we apply onto ourselves by our culture and our society. But then there are stresses that are good. Actually, as an engineer, stresses are very important. How many of you have driven over a bridge before? Have you ever sat on the bridge and noticed it's doing this? Sometimes at first you get scared. This 18-wheeler comes, this thing, how's it going to survive? I remember I asked as a child in New York City, as we were on the George Washington Bridge, our cars were stopped, and I said, Dad, it's shaking. And Dad says, yes, it's a suspension bridge. It has these, it's made to move. But Dad, he said, no, John, if it moves, it's stronger. What? Did you hear me? If it moves, it's stronger. In fact, it was Mr. Martin. I got to talk to you one of these days again. Mr. Martin that came here, he had an I-beam, and I want to get one of those I-beams. He has an I-beam that's made like out of rubber or plastic. I-beams are metal. Those of you who know what I-beams are, they're really strong metal, but they have a pliability to them to move. If there's no pliability, they will snap. But because they are pliable and they move, because you're sitting on that bridge and it's moving up and down, even though it's cement, it's got joints in it, and it's able to handle the stress. The stress, that's compactness of stress. And you know what that compression stress is in your lives, right? Have you ever had an appointment where too many appointments come up? Monday was like that. Tuesday was like that. Wednesday was like that. It's like, and then more appointments come. Oh, Pastor, we have a Glendale Academy thing we got to meet on. I got to be here. But I have to go. Okay, I'll go. Wait, no, I have to be. No, Elder Salazar, there's a Zoom meeting I have to be at. Well, I'm supposed to be in this place, and I'm supposed to. Never mind. You shove more things in. Stress, it's called compression stress. But the more compression that happens, the stronger it is. The less you are brittle, or should I say the more you are brittle, the less you can compress and expand, the more you break. The reason why a rubber plate, when it hits the ground, bounces is because it's able to take the stress. But the item that can't take the stress smashes. Right? Let's read here. Jesus says, verse 41, Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried about and upset. I like that, worried and upset, he says. Not just worried, and upset about many things. Ladies, how many of you would be annoyed at Jesus by now? I know, in my life, I would be annoyed at him too. Because I have a lot of things that have to happen. And they have to happen now. You know, type A personality. I know some of you guys out there are like that. Oh, it doesn't matter. You know, like Maria. But actually, that isn't like that, because you know, even though you may be like that, there are other things that stress you. Finding your way out of stress is not a way to be strong. I know we want vacations all the time. Have you ever had that? I need a vacation. My favorite one is when Arnold Schwarzenegger said it in Terminator 2. I need a vacation. And his head was all, never mind. If you don't know what I'm talking about, never mind. You go to the vacation, and guess what happens? You're so busy, you need a vacation from the vacation. Or you lay on a beach. And when you do that, you find you get so tired that you can't even do anything. You ever notice that? Oh, I'm resting. I'm for sure going to be happy to do stuff, and you can't even. I need to go. That's you know, the wandering that happens. My friends, we all think that vacation will help, and it does. But what we need is a vacation of the soul, not of the body. Body's good. Remember, we believe as Seventh-day Adventists that the soul is not immortal. You know, many people believe that the body dies and the spirit goes back to God, then the soul floats around or goes to heaven or goes to wherever, and it's conscious. We believe, as the Bible teaches, that the spirit plus the body equals the soul. You are a living soul, but you can be a dead soul. And then Jesus will come back and make you a living soul again by delivering the spirit back to your body. Boom. And now you're back. And it's as if I was never gone. It was like a deep sleep with no dreams. So vacation for the soul includes the body and the spirit, and it includes God. You're worried about a great many things. You're on your phone worrying about a great many things. All these things that are supposed to make our lives easier compresses us even more and stresses the very fibers of our being. But Jesus has an answer. Matthew, I want you to keep your finger here in Luke chapter 10, and we're going to go to Matthew chapter 11. It seems like we're almost in the same book, right? Go from 10 to 11, but it's going to be Matthew chapter 11. Again, this is at the end of the chapter of Matthew 11. Go to the very end of it. Start with verse 25. This is after, of course, Jesus was just blasting the good Adventists out there, the good ones who supposedly follow God. He says, shame on you, Capernaum, because if the pagan cities out there had gotten the miracles you had gotten, everyone would be changed. But because you are used to good people around, you see a miracle and go, oh, wonderful. And you move on and do whatever you want to do. He just finished that. But then, and that's a stressor, isn't it? That's a big stressor hearing that. But then he comes back with an amazing thing. Verse 23, at that time Jesus then said, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and the learned and revealed them to the little children. Did you hear that? The children understand these things. And by the way, in our churches, the children understand the pulse. When somebody puts on a good face to the pastor, but they're not such a great person, the kids see it. I'm telling you. The kids see it, right? You've revealed it to the little children. Verse 26, yes, Father, for this is what you are pleased to do. All things have been committed to me by the Father. No one knows the Son except the Father. No one knows the Father except if the Son chooses for that person, meaning that Jesus chooses you to know the Father. That's the idea that's here. Then he says, verse 28, you've heard this before, but I want you to hear it for the first time again. Come to me, all of you that are weary and what? Burdened, stressed. And I will give you rest minus the ST. Sorry, Sanlantanga we always call ST, so we're not going to minus the ST that way, but we're going to minus the stress ST. I will give you rest. Now, don't fall asleep on me as I say these. But I want you to keep listening, because we all say, yes, we need rest, yes. But listen to what Jesus says. Doesn't mean just walking away and doing nothing. There's something there. Because Jesus understands that the only way to find rest is to do something that matters to you. Because if you need a vacation, not just your body needs it, but your soul needs it. You need to be fed. And sometimes feeding includes moving the hand to bring the food to the mouth. Right? He says, I will bring you what? Are you awake? Did everyone fall asleep on me as I'm talking about rest? Take my what? What's a yolk? It's not the yolk of an egg. I mean, I'd love to take a yolk. I kind of like yolks. I can put some little toast in it. But the yolk that's actually on a horse or on a cow or an ox, does that mean rest? A yoke is it's not considered like a resting thing. Usually when you have a vacation spot, the first thing you think of is not you're going to be in a yoke and you're going to be walking together with someone else to plow a field. Right? Think about that. Jesus, do you see what Jesus is doing? He's using poetry to take opposites and pull them together so that we might understand what real rest is. Because I mentioned earlier that you break if you do not have stress. Stress is a part of strength. Without stress, the block breaks. It must be able to be pliable, and that's stress. It makes you stronger and more able. That means that you got to do something to be strong. It's kind of like the guy who wants to have the big muscles but doesn't want to do the lifting or wants to do them less. So you're taking the steroids to look big. And the problem is the muscle doesn't just go here, it just goes there. And then you start to break down. It's not natural. And that stress that should have been done to create the muscle in the first place starts to break the person. That's really what happens to a person. They start to break apart, essentially, in older age. That's why the steroids are very bad, because it's fake. We all do this. because we don't want to work. But work isn't bad. It's good. Just, you need to work for the right reasons. You need to know why. Take my yoke upon you, Jesus said, and learn my ways. Read that? Learn of me. It means learn my ways of doing things. Because those disciples, they worked. In fact, if you go backward in this, you'll find that he sent out the 72. Remember the 72? He told them to go out there and find people that can believe. And they did that. He's not going to tell them you just sleep all day. Sleeping all day is great. If you had a really hard time, you got to recover. But sleeping all the time, all day, just leads to destruction of the body. The yoke, take my yoke upon you. Learn of me, Jesus says. Because, why? Let's read. For I am gentle and what? Are you in the text? This is Matthew chapter 11. At the end, I am gentle, and that means that the yoke is, the guy is not whipping you nonstop. Means he actually loves you. He wants you to work. And it says, my yoke is easy and my burden is what? A yoke is never light unless you're doing it with someone else. Right? And then it becomes lighter. Burnout happens. But it happens most of the time because when you're doing what you want to do for God, oftentimes you find that people just don't appreciate it at all. And so you say, I'm done. That's how Martha felt. Isn't it true? Martha felt like that. Moms, Martha felt like that too. But if it matters, if you can do it together with somebody, especially with Jesus, he says, I will give you rest. Do you have a life of rest? It's kind of like Sabbath, Shabbat. Shabbat means you rest. But here's the problem. I'm a pastor and I'm preaching on Sabbath. I'm worried about this and I'm worried about that. We got kids. We got kids on the cameras here. They're working it, right? We've got people on live streams. We got guys all over the place, deacons and deaconesses, trying to make sure things are locked and unlocked, making sure we get things done, carrying things from this place to that place. How can you rest like that? That would be because the word Shabbat connects with the word shalom. Shalom. You see it by 7 candlestick. You always see that shalom. In fact, that's the sh sound in it. It's a shin, which looks just almost like a 3 candle. Shalom is peace, even though you're in the middle of a storm. Stress is happening everywhere, but peace is on the inside. Why? Because you have a rudder in your life. Martha says, why in the world is my sister, the lazy backside, sitting here listening to you, Jesus? He says, you are worried and you're upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen. What she has chosen is what? Better. It won't be taken from her. That doesn't mean that Mary isn't in the kitchen the next time Jesus comes. It means that's what she needed at that moment for shalom in her life. I pray to God that as you find shalom and you find rest in your life as you connect to Jesus and disconnect the things from your life that are giving you real stressors. I'm not talking about necessarily work things. I'm telling you, you can have the same job, but then there's other things. You know the other things that creep their way in and stop everything. Oftentimes they have to do with moral things that we do that break us apart. If you find shalom through the pain, through the difficulties of your lives, you got to first start with sitting at the feet of Jesus. As Martha also learned herself. All of us need to discover what real rest is in Him.